say congratulations to the BSE for organizing the second Listings and Investments Conference. I've been given the honor of moderating the topic or discussion around demystifying the listing journey. And we're going to try by all means to actually do that. We're going to try to make it as simple as possible. Thank you. Introductions have already been made, but I will quickly just introduce my panelists. On my immediate left, Re Tumelo, Executive Director of Affinitas. Next to him, Re Masunga, Managing Director of BTC. Thereafter, Re Pumapi, Managing Director of Shumba Energy. And my far left, Re Monakotla, who is a Director and Founder of AT&T Monakotla. We are not going to waste any time. We're going to get straight into it. And with this session, we're going to try to make things very simple. We want to really get you involved. We want it to flow. And with that, I'm going to start with Re Tumelo here. I'm going to put you on the spot. I will start with you.
Okay.
Stacey spoke about hand-holding. One of the challenges we picked up in the earlier presentation was for possible candidates for listing, hand-holding will benefit a lot of companies. You having been on the other side, preparing candidates for listing, as well as also now on another side whereby you actually have taken your own company or companies that wherever you're a director in terms of listing. If you could just handhold us in this particular session in terms of the gray areas, the things that we should look out for. Yes, we have the listing rules, but if you could just handhold us in terms of your experience, the kind of things outside from just the listing, guidelines, the kind of things that maybe some of the candidates had omitted, and so forth. Over to you.
Yes, thank you, Bakang, for the opportunity, and I think it's still good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. Yes, you're right. I've been, in my past life, I was a stockbroker, so I was involved in advising quite a few companies to come to the stock exchange, including quite a number of the junior exploration companies that Dr. Jeffries was talking about. And currently, I also, in the recent past, I've gone through a listing myself. For medium companies, I would prefer to call them medium-sized companies. What you find is that the key thing that they need to go through a listing is to put in place a strong team of advisors. That is very, very critical if you're going to, once you make the decision or you're contemplating about going for a listing. Because when you operate as a private company, you find that you only have a company secretary. But when you get to listing stage, or when you want to become a listed company, now you need a transfer secretary. When you, as a private company, you only have, your compliance is more with the Companies Act. But now you're moving into another area where you now have to deal with the listings rules of the Botswana Stock Exchange. And sometimes it attracts even other regulations to come into play. So I think the key thing that I've seen in my working life is that companies that consider coming to the market need to make sure you've got a proper legal advisor, get your sponsoring broker, shop for your transfer secretary, because these now become the key advisors that will help you make the transition from being a private company to being a public company. Yeah.
I think Dr. Jeffrey spoke about, yes, the SMEs as part of the delegates. He also said, look, they're also investors. But I want to also introduce a third group. There are people with ideas, where necessarily they don't have past financials. What all they have is an idea. And I don't know if I will be appropriate to say, like with Affinitas, it was about an idea of creating this investment holding company that is going to invest in Africa. Can you just tell us about that experience in terms of bringing it to market? Because it was just an idea. You didn't have that track record or past financials and so forth. Yeah.
Yes, well, I think this is where credit should go to the BSE in terms of their structure, where you've got the main board, which is ideal for companies that have been in operation and have got a track record. I think they require 5 years operating profit. You should have been made. So there's a main board and then there's a venture capital board. Now, the venture capital board is really ideal where, in our scenario, where we wanted to bring to the market a concept that we believed the market needed at the time. And the venture capital board became the ideal avenue of bringing the company to market. What is key in that case now is you are approaching people to put money and back. The main thing that they are backing is your credentials, your understanding of what you're proposing, and that they know that you can deliver on what you're proposing. And also the viability of what you want to deliver to the market. We set up Affinitas as an Africa-focused investment holding company. And what was lacking on the Botswana Stock Exchange at the time, if you look at the composition of the domestic companies indexed, I think it was 60% of it was influenced by the banking and financial services stocks. So your Barclays, FNB, BIHL. Those were the companies that were driving the market at the time. But the other thing that was also not present in the market at the time was diversification away from Botswana. So anything that happened in Botswana, you would immediately see the ripple effects of it coming through the companies that are listed. When we created Affinitas, we said there's a bigger market outside Botswana. Africa's got a population, I think it's about 1.1 billion people. And also, that we realized that the managers did not have enough instruments locally. Or they had cash, but there was not enough instruments that they could invest in on the BSE. So bringing on Affinitas was bringing on a vehicle that would allow them to invest as part of their local portfolio, but get exposure to markets outside Botswana and opportunities that exist outside Botswana. So I think, to convince the institutions or the investors to come to your party, you really have to come up with a proposition that says, this is something that you as investors need, and we are bringing the skills that can deliver this opportunity to you.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Ray Tumelo. If I could continue that question, Rapumapi. I mean, with you, it's a mining venture. You hadn't really produced anything. I mean, you hadn't been even put even a spade into the ground, but you still managed to come to the exchange and you were able to raise money. At what point did you make the decision to raise capital from the stock market, and what were the events that led to such a decision?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you and good morning. Can everybody hear me?
Nothing, a little bit.
Okay, so on our side, when we started 7 years ago.
Sorry. Can you hear him in the audience? Okay.
No.
Technical guys, can you just please raise the volume a little bit?
Is it on?
Hello? Okay.
That's better. Thank you.
So, good morning, everybody. Thank you for the question. So, on our side, really, when we started 7 years ago, we didn't even have any piece of land or anything, but we came with the strategy that we know Botswana has got a lot of coal and we want to develop assets there. Obviously, at that stage, it was too early to list, and so we had to wait until we'd have actually secured our first asset. And the decision to list is, I think, came from a couple of things. The first one, that the whole management team came from an environment of working either within or with listed companies. So we understood the process quite well. And in fact, from when we started, we actually operated from a governance perspective and even a structural perspective as if we were listed. So unlike other companies, when we listed, our actual operations didn't change much, although it was, there are certain things where you have to beef up. that's the first reason. The second reason is of course, the financing. So I'd say since we listed, we've probably raised over 150 to 200 million pula, somewhere there, which has allowed us to put together a solid portfolio of assets. And funnily enough, it's all been through acquiring them from either Australians or Taiwanese or parties that are no longer in the position to develop the assets. So I think the reason for listing is exactly that. It allows you to access financial depth, and also from an investment perspective, I think what's important, it forces you to do things such as annual audits and board structures, and even just the way you do your operations. You do things in such a manner that anybody coming from the outside can look at what you're doing, and it's audited, it's clean, and that in fact creates more of an asset base than just doing things the old-fashioned way.
Excellent. Thank you, Repomapi. Ramasunga, the lightning talk, Ray Jeffries did say one of his disappointments around parastatals being used, or rather using the stock exchange as a platform for privatization, and as one of the entities, I think BTC as the parastatal recently that got privatized or semi-privatized, as I said. It was a long wait from the part of us investors and the rest of the country for the listing. But if you could just tell us from your perspective, what was the most challenging part of the process in this, in terms of leading to listing, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah. Thanks, Bakan, for that question. Am I audible? I know the acoustics are quite bad in this place. Can you hear me at the back?
Yeah.
You can?
Yeah.
Thank you. I think before I answer a question, maybe what we need to do is celebrate success. Probably, as Keith has rightly said, the privatization policy was adopted in 2000. And Rema, who's among the most successful entrepreneurs in Botswana, probably was the cabinet minister then. And in terms of Pakalani Estates, it succeeded more than the privatization of state enterprises. But what I need to highlight today is that, with these challenges, BTC's privatization was actually quite successful. It was quite successful in the sense that, one, it was oversubscribed 1.4 times, meaning there's excess cash sitting out in the market looking for homes. So I think that's a point that I need to highlight to this forum, that indeed there's cash in the market there. If you really want to list, it's an opportunity to actually tap into these cash reserves that are sitting in Botswana. And two, in terms of the structure itself, again, the government had made it very, very clear that retail investors are the ones that should be pushed forward in terms of this transaction. And most of the listings that have happened in Botswana, typically what the companies would do, they would go for private placement first, and the institutional investors will go buy a larger chunk of what's on offer. But in our context, the government was very, very clear that we want to promote, I think, citizen wealth creation process of some sort. And Keith did speak to some of the numbers that we managed to attract more than 50K new investors onto the stock exchange through the listing of BTC. So for me, that's a major success, that now we've been able to expose Botswana to this process of investing on the stock exchange. And being a first, obviously, out since 2000, I think it's something that's commendable, and we need to rejoice over that. But in terms of the challenges themselves, now to your point, I think the challenges can be crafted in twofold. The first one was, obviously, the challenges were premised around the structure of the transaction itself. The first portion in terms of the structure of the transaction, government had made it very, very clear that we needed to ring-fence a certain piece of the network, what I would call certain pieces of assets, and transfer them to an SPV, a special purpose vehicle, which in turn became Bofinet. That in itself was a complex process. And business people here would agree that whether you are doing a merger or a demerger of companies, that's a complex process in itself. So it was a major milestone in terms of getting that out of the way. And the implications of that is that we really needed to actually re-strategize and reinvent the business because a portion of the business had gone away. So we had to refocus our strategy, refocus our business models so that we remain attractive to prospective investors. So the structure itself sort of took quite a while in terms of really sorting out this separation of assets piece. The second bit, being a parastatal again, it was the complex governance structure around it. It's not your typical private company where one or two shareholders make a decision and they do a bit of due diligence and with the help of advisors and they go to the stock exchange. This is quite quick. But in the context of this transaction, you have BTC as the organization earmarked for listing, and you've got the Ministry of Transport and Comms representing government. You've got Ministry of Finance Development Planning as the government purse holder. You've got paper having been set out on the side as government project manager. And you've got the cabinet again, which in certain instances will have to make decisions on certain matters. You've got politicians on the other side. You've got the union, and you've got the general population. So in terms of the governance around really stakeholder management, it was quite complex. And obviously that led to the process to privatize BTC taking a bit longer than your typical listing of any entity. But by and large, we had to do it. We had to really do it well. And we had to keep our eyes on the ball. And I'm happy that we went through that process. As complex as it was, we managed to list BTC, and it was oversubscribed. And the beauty now is that within that short period of listing, I mean, I think if you had to read the news even as far back as yesterday, or if you had to go to the BSC website, you realize that the BTC stock is the best performing stock in the market today. So meaning that Botswana, who have invested on BTC already, have gotten 25%, at least 25% capital appreciation already in a short period of time.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Ramasunga. Ramona Kotla, don't feel left out. I'm going to come to you. I'm going to come to you, sir. But maybe just to continue, Ramasunga, how has the listing really affected your competitive positioning? I mean, for an Orange or a Mascom, they don't need any other intelligence to know what's happening in your firm. Yeah. All they have to actually look at your annual reports, is to look at, obviously, attend your investor relations meetings to get insight of what's happening from a competitive level. So how has this listing really affected you from a competition point of view? Because often the fear is that when you list, you're really opening up your business to competition. They can actually see what's happening. They even know your prospects, before you even, start rolling them out.
Yeah. Thank you for that. In fact, it has actually strengthened our competitive positioning. Okay. And in fact, I would safely say that the competition is actually scared of BT's position to date, because we are very, very clear now. Because what used to happen before, being a government-owned entity, we had to balance some commercial interest and social interest in terms of the government's general agenda. But now the repositioning of the business, we are making BTC a lot more commercial entity. So the agility in terms of BTC now, it's improving in the sense that all those opportunities that are quite available in the market, we can take them a lot faster. It will take a little while, but and you can see even in terms of governance at BTC level, it has improved in the sense that before, even at board level, it was by and large government-appointed directors, but we have strengthened our governance structure by introducing independent directors. And so many things are happening within the BTC to make it a lot more commercially oriented entity. And over and above that, customer-centric entity, as opposed to a traditional government-owned entity, which is slow, which is doesn't really move fast enough and doesn't really take advantage of the opportunities that are available in the market. I think we are in a better space right now. Even if they look at our numbers, we've got ways of looking at our numbers as well. If you look at Orange, I'm just going. Let me just be honest with you. Orange, as a group, is also listed, and you can have access to that information. Mascom is part of the M10 group, can also have access to this information. It doesn't stop us from really getting to know how the other business is operating. But the most important thing is that you cannot buy someone else's brain or thinking power. So behind any business is the mind. So it's more the collective mindset within BTC that's driving the success of BTC to date. The collective thinking at board level and the collective thinking at executive level. And you cannot buy that, and you cannot duplicate people. So that's where I think if you have to advise other companies that are maybe thinking of listing, is that even if you open up your books, people will never be you. If you are Remahang and you have conceived the idea of Pakalani Estates, even if I have to try my own estate development, it won't be like Pakalani because I cannot buy your brains. So I think that's the most critical aspect in any business.
Absolutely. Ramon Akotla, I promised I was going to come to you. I think from the lightning talk again, Ray Jeffries was saying that typically, for listings, for a Botswana context, that most firms won't qualify in the sense that they're too small. I wish to acknowledge say that you one of the most successful entrepreneurs, and you've done quite well in the transport and logistics area, or rather industry in Botswana. But my belief is also that in as much as we say, yes, many SMEs don't qualify, but the model around the world is that if more money is not put into SMEs, via private equity or via listing, those SMEs will never actually become listed. We will never, from a Botswana perspective, also grow the listings from the BSC. So, Ramon Akotla, I mean, as an entrepreneur, what would you consider, as an existing business owner before listing? And I think we all will learn quite a lot if you could, just share testimony. I mean, be honest about it. What would you consider? Having listened to deliberations of, the morning of other panelists, what would you consider before you actually decide to go for a listing?
Dumela Mbetsu. I think I'm privileged to be sitting here. Most of the panelists are listed. And I'm happy that there's been an announcement for the CPD for the SMEs. And I would say I would be a focal of interest, per se, to SMEs. Now, the big and foremost thing that you basically consider has been addressed by a lot of speakers. It's the amount of your willingness to open up your business to the public. That would say the investors. So most of the SMEs are premised on being family businesses. So that decision point is very, very critical to identify the fact that you want to basically open up to public. But it has been mentioned by Dr. Jeffries that it could be on different perspectives. You want to actually grow the company, or you want to basically skim off some of your investment, your shareholding, a little bit, dilute it a little bit and skim off some few funds. So those two drives from a business perspectives should be determined by your own business cycle as a business person. Like in my own instance, the biggest and most important thing is, am I willing to basically put in more directors into the company? Do I want public scrutiny into my business? The other thing would be, is it difficult actually to get funding for my expansion? How expensive is the funding that I get? And obviously, the divulging of your financial positions, your business position is what you have to satisfy financiers with. It's something that you get accustomed to. So on that basis, an entrepreneur will make a consideration. Now, from AT&T group of companies, it's all about whether it has reached the maturity where you believe that you would want to actually have extra investors into it. It's not an issue of funding for now. And one of the things that basically are going to be a key milestone is the ability to take the business to the next level. Yeah, we talked about the size of the market in Botswana. That is very small. And obviously, as you grow, even when you grow your foot in your shoes, they ultimately become small, the shoes, because the feet grows bigger. So even in business, as you expand, you ultimately come to a point where you feel that the market is too small. And at that point, that's where you basically want to expand outside the country. And it could be one of your driving strategies to say, as I expand into Africa, I would need investment to go into there. Where can I get the investment? And then you look at all these instruments, and the stock exchange could be one of those instruments that you could consider at that juncture. Thank you.
Thank you, Raymond Akgotla. And actually, as part of the investment community, I look forward to seeing you actually expanding and growing your business.
Thank you very much.
I think we're doing well with time. If I could just go back to you, Re Tumelo. I'm tempted sometimes to call you Soraro. No, you're dead. But Re Tumelo, one of the questions I once got from a retail investor, they were disappointed with the price movement of Affinitas. You know, the expectation with other previous listings that maybe this thing was just going to just immediately, start picking up, and the price movement will be advantageous to them. And the education I had to do to them or to this particular retail investor is for them to understand that Affinitas is actually a permanent, capital, entity.
Yes.
Yeah. So I just want to bring the issue of share price movements, because often, as directors, you may ignore price movements, but sometimes you're affected. You think that when your share price is going down, obviously maybe there's something you're doing wrong as directors. Well, necessarily is not the case all the time.
Yes.
So can you just maybe share with us, how do you handle this issue of share price movement? And let me just stop there.
Okay. To be honest, share price movement, a large part of it is outside the short-term share price movements, outside the control of the directors or the management of the company. And this is something that any company that comes to the market, you have to bear that in mind. You don't influence or have any influence in your share price movement. What you can, though, do is make sure that you focus on building into your company the long-term value. As you rightfully put it, Affinitas itself is a permanent capital vehicle. Yeah. So the investments that we go into are more longer term. Our outlook is long term, and even I would say some of the opportunities that we go into are more greenfield than what most people are familiar with. It is the norm on the stock market that when you have a listing, that you do get immediately after the listing a rapid appreciation in the share price. Yeah. But that is usually more familiar with, let's say, a BTC or more mature companies, because when they come onto the market and there's been an oversubscription of the shares, those shareholders who were there before, who applied during the IPO and did not get any shares, would then go immediately onto the secondary market after listing looking for the shares. And that creates an opportunity for those who got shares to exit immediately, and you can create a premium immediately of 15, 10%, but that's built in for a period of a few weeks, and then the stock price tends to correct after that. From what I've seen is, if you look at the more venture capital stocks like ourselves, companies listed on the venture capital board, those that have listed the same way that we have, I haven't seen that immediate uptick in the share price. Purely because those are longer term investments, and it will take time for the returns to come through. So if you're looking at ourselves, if you're looking at Shumba, you should have, two things. A, have a longer term outlook on the investment. So you don't expect a dividend in the first year, don't expect returns to come through fairly quickly. Two, have a higher, should I say, risk appetite or tolerance, because companies which will list on the venture capital board will tend to be more risky than what you find on the main board. This is why, to go back, we can recall African Energy, African Copper, Diamond X, Discovery Metals that went under because of in the resource sector space. But in the same, if you look back and if you look closely at the numbers as well, you'd find that Diamond X actually at one point, I think it listed at 50 tab and went up to 2 pool at one point. Discovery Metals itself, although in the end it's a sad story, but it listed at just below 1 pula and at one point went to 13 pula per share. So the returns can be made. You just need, I think for the retail investors, they need to understand how to understand the stocks, understand when to go in, when to exit, and have that tolerance for understanding that your medium stocks will tend to be more volatile than the main board listings.
Thank you.
Can I just add to that?
Yeah, please.
I think just adding to what Dr. Muller is saying is that, that there are two things that affect your stock movement. Generally, I think it's the liquidity of the stock, so the pool of people that can trade in your shares. That's the one thing that's out of your control. But what it is in your control is the way you disseminate information. So as a listed company, I believe it's very important to keep people informed of what you're doing, particularly the investors that you know are a bit more active. So you can assist your stock in getting better traction by keeping the shareholder base well informed. And on top of that, you do have to make sure that you're adding fundamental value on the ground. Yes. So what we've found as we've grown our asset base and we've actually moved closer to production is that our investor base has changed more from a retail to more of an institutional investor base, which is good in terms of you're getting longer-term investors that understand that you are now creating more significant value. But in terms of liquidity, again, it creates a bit of an issue because it's the retail clients that speculate and like trading more and have a shorter-term investment horizon.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rapumapi. Ramasunga, yes?
Still on that, I mean, I think BTC is a living example of that. And just to add on to what he just said, as a business, you really have to stay true to your investment story. Drive your business so that you can actually create value. And over time, the shareholders would see. And they would only see that through a process of dissemination of information. For example, when you release those numbers, those are facts. And the point is, in terms of control over the movement of the share price, yes, you really don't have much control as a business, but you do have influence. Influence is just through driving your own business. And it's important that you stay true to your course because only the truth over time will save you as a business. Absolutely. So for me, I think if you want to keep it in simple terms, is that if BTC is out to deliver telecommunication services to Botswana through this form and that form, and these numbers as stipulated in the prospectus, we have to deliver on those numbers. It's as simple as that. And shareholders would actually be happy and stay on course, and actually that would eventually in the long term help take the share price to higher levels.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ramasunga. I think I've got a gentle reminder that our time is up. I just want to thank the panelists here for having at least participate in this session. And I hope that we've really demystified this journey around listing. I think we can confirm that it's not only about you being in operation for a long time, being an SME or a large company. At the BSC, they do also like ideas, and investors do like ideas. We can invest in ideas. And I think secondly, I hope also through this session that even what the BSC has said earlier on, that the BSC is also ready for SMEs. Ramona Kotla, this TPD board that's going to be introduced. We look forward to you considering a listing as well on the Botswana Stock Exchange. Bagayeso, thank you so much for your time. And we're going to hand over to you. Chair, yeah.